Welcome to this brand new episode of Cast It to the King. I'm your host, Joshua Mickle. Alongside with me is Pastor Joshua Forbes and virtually my father, Jack Mickle. And before we get started, I would like to just take this moment to just briefly say a message of we don't condone black marketing. We don't condone any third party, like we don't endorse it sort of thing. And I say that because of all the Toucan War jerseys I have that apparently came from China. And now this Axis Conference hat that I have gotten made from Nashville, I have received a cease and desist letter from those that be at the powers of the Life Church. So I do not condone anyone to do this. So this is not official merch. Let's just be clear. This is not official merch for Axis Conference 2025. And so I would like to just put that out there for my lawyers to take care of, and that we do not endorse any third party, any site hustles, deals of ripping off and potential employers. So with that being said,
you just took it upon yourself to.
Yes, I received yesterday when I was in New York. 2 days ago in New York. I was at the New York location. I received a cease and desist message from somebody. So, yes, that actually did happen. So,
what was the cease and desist for? Were you like, saying, "Hey, this is what I got. This is where I got it"?
Yes. So essentially, like me and my wife went to Nashville, and there's this hat vendor at the Opry Mills Mall, and he said, "Hey, any logo we can make for you." And I'm like, you know what? And I actually have the other one with me right here, just for a comparison between the two. This logo right here is heat pressed, and it's a little bit coming, like you see a little crack right there starting to peel off.
Did you have that one made too?
No, this is official.
That's official.
This is the official hat right here
for Axis Conference 23.
Exactly, and similar to 24 and the years before that. The hat's similar to this, versus this one is sewn in. And it's got some style to it.
I guess you didn't get it through the right channels.
I guess so.
Yeah, so you have to go through the right channels in order to get the merch. So
exactly. So for today's episode, I will just wear this hat backwards. So
was it Pastor John? Was it Pastor John who said cease and desist?
So, all right, we will get started with the show officially. It is Father's Day. We are celebrating this episode with a full-on Father's Day episode, talking about fathers, the importance of the man of the house, the man of God, and what better way than to start off with the two men that are great fathers and great heads of their households, and Pastor Josh Forbes and Jack Mickle on the other line right here. And I will start with my own father. Dad, what do you think it means when in today's society, when we have when there's an important need of having fathers in the household, what does that mean to you? Like in terms of being like a man of God, like this, like the staunch anchor in the household, how would you describe what it is that you do to set example for your spouse and your children?
Well, you could probably answer that better than I could, since you were the one observing my quote unquote how I modeled being a father to you, Noah, and Nicole. But I can say that to be a father is more than just having a child. It's also, and it's not just being married and being in the house. To me, it's being present in the moment with your children and with your wife, because so many times guys like to detach, or like to be there but not there, especially like if you're watching a football game. It's like, hey, somebody's talking to you, you're like, yeah, okay, got it, just go away, right? And sometimes that attitude carries on through life itself. You have a hard day at work, or you're not having a good day or something like that, and your children need something from you, whether it be emotional support, or they need somebody to talk to, or someone to listen to them, or maybe go to their games and their practices, et cetera, et cetera. So it's being present, which means being involved. It means listening. It means sometimes having that tough love, if you will. But it's definitely first and foremost doing your best to model Jesus in Scripture. It's so difficult sometimes, especially if you're in a quote unquote, I don't want to say manly profession, but if you're in a profession where it's dominated by males and you're around it all day, sometimes it's difficult to, you want to be that Christian at work, and you are, but you got to be careful not to bring certain things home. You're kind of a filter. One of my favorite verses in Joshua is talking about me and my house, we will serve the Lord. You do what you need to do, but for us, we're going to serve the Lord. And it's a process. It's a journey. It's not a destination. So every day has a new challenge. Every day, every child, every marriage has its own challenges. It's not going to be sunshine and roses all the day long. It's going to be a lot of work. And that's why I say that, love is great. Love doesn't pay the bills. But if you're committed to one another, talk about a man and wife, a commitment to each other, a commitment to marriage, a commitment to God, a commitment to going to church, a commitment to modeling Jesus. That is what can get you through. It's not always love, because I didn't always love you, Josh. Sometimes you got on my nerves a lot. but same thing for Julie. Sometimes you don't love me all the time. I mean, we all have our wacky tendencies. So that's what it means to me, is to be there but be present, and to do your best. You're not going to be perfect, and I don't think anybody really wants anybody perfect. I mean, only one who was is Jesus. So you're going to get things wrong, but I think kids, they remember. He may not have been perfect, but he was the best he could be. And that's all you really can strive for, comparing yourself to Jesus, letting the Holy Spirit work through you. That's it. Just do your best and let the Holy Spirit strengthen you and guide you, and ask for forgiveness when you screw up, and just, be present for your wife, be present for your children.
Pastor Josh?
Man. So just hearing you talk, I was just thinking about my upbringing, thinking about my childhood. So I grew up in a divorced household. My parents divorced when I was 8, and by God's grace, I ended up getting a stepmom and a stepdad. Both of my parents, they moved on. And growing up with my dad, he was in the military, and so he worked a 9-to-5 job. So I spent my school years with him, and we started going to church, right? But I think honestly, we're just figuring it out. He wasn't a pastor, he wasn't a leader. He was growing in his faith. My stepmom was growing in her faith. And I'll be honest with you, I went to church regularly, but I didn't know Jesus. I sang about him in the youth choir. I went to Sunday school like most young people do, but I never had that revelation of who Jesus was. And then I just continued just to chase sports and chase academics. And it was when I was 15, my dad got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and he passed away. And now, like, my world is in a tailspin, right? I'm thinking of all the things, like, he's never going to see me go to prom. He's never going to see me graduate from high school. He's never going to see me get married. And after him passing away, I ended up going to live with my mom and my stepdad in Montana. And so my stepdad, he stepped in, and he became that father figure that I needed, right? And so he modeled what it meant to work hard and to show up and to be honoring and to be the man of the house. That's the things that I really pulled from his life. And then now transitioning into adulthood, I got married when I was 25. I was still a boy trying to grow into a man at that particular point in time. And a lot of things happened. I got married, and then we got pregnant right after we got married, like a month after. And so Like I'm learning. I'm still growing as a Christian man. I'm in ministry by this time, and moving the kingdom forward, but I'm still growing in maturity as well, right? Jesus, it says that he grew in wisdom and stature and favor with God and man. And so like I felt like I was in that growth process, and just again trying to model what it looks like to be a good dad. But this was my first time being a father, and I had a bonus daughter in my first marriage as well. So trying to navigate all the nuances. How can I be present? To your point, how can I set a godly example? And in fatherhood is probably the hardest thing maybe next to marriage that we're called to do. And so, but I think it was just more just allowing your children to watch your life, and to see your consistency, and to see your dedication, not just in God's house, because I never wanted my kids to resent God's house. And I know I've had seasons where what was required took a lot of time, and so then you really have to be intentional about counterbalancing that. So if you're going to be pulled away for conferences, or if you're going to be pulled away for big events, then you really have to be intentional about, okay, now we need to prioritize some family time, whether it's going out for ice cream, whether it's that needed vacation, whether it's whatever, right? And here during this adolescent season of my son's life, I ask myself sometimes, is what I'm doing, is it working, right? Is he getting it? Because I find myself fussing at a 14-year-old, clean your room, right? And do your chores, all the things that we all have to tell our adolescents to do. And so sometimes I wonder, like, is he learning? Like, is he gleaning anything from me? And yesterday was actually a cool reminder. We were going to get our haircut, and our barber was suffering with some nerve issues in her hand. And so I told her, I said, when we're done, we'll pray for you. And so I said, Josiah, come on, we're going to go back and we're going to pray for the barber. And so I said, I want you to start, and then I'll finish the prayer. And as he started praying, I heard me. Like, he was praying passionately, fervently, even use some of my language, some of my mannerisms, which means that he was in the presence of me praying, not just for people, but even privately.
Mm-hmm.
He was in my presence.
Yeah.
And that's the only way that he could even be an echo of some of the things that I've prayed. And I'm like, God, thank you for reminding me that even though I'm not perfect, even though my kids aren't perfect, that something is sticking, and that they're going to carry that on, hopefully, with their kids.
Yeah, I would just say for me personally, to have the type of upbringing that I had, like military father, loving mother, first child. So I was the experiment child, as they would.
You're the oldest.
Yeah, I would. They would always say it's, you can't watch Aladdin, you can't watch Harry Potter. Then with the second and third child, they're watching those movies. So that's what I lived through growing up. It's like, no for you, but yes to them. But I mean, I guess that comes with the territory of growing and learning as a parent. In terms of what it means for me, I think as I'm getting older now, 31 years old, going through the flows of being a husband and trying to have a family with my wife, it's I glean towards those moments of what made me who I am from the things my father has taught me, either verbally or through actions of where, I mean, through his words or his actions, where to be like just life, like wisdom on life, or what things not to do, obviously, like things you should go after, things you don't go after. And we'll get into this for a bit, for what you two may think on this next particular, on another topic later. But in terms of what I think what it means to have that man in the household, I keep I always keep up like always in the know about like what's going on, like in the news per se, more so like on the political scale. Like I do keep up with that. I don't post about it as much as I used to, thank God. But one of the things that always gets brought up is that compared to how it was like even back in the 80s or even the 2000s, like today, the rate of single parent households without a father dramatically, like disproportionately affects a child's upbringing and what potentially that child may do on their own when they're out of the house. So I'm always, whenever that comes up, I'm always counting my blessings as to what would have my life been like if I didn't have my father in my life. Like maybe I'm off doing something. I'm probably not here for obvious reasons, because it's because of my dad. Like even though he didn't know it, him being transferred here to the military base is what opened us up here to the church in the first place. So it's the little inklings that like produces fruit like so much later down the line that you don't even realize. And I mean, and also like the mother is the loving figure of the household, and the father figure I view as like the anchor. Even though he has to show you tough love, it's for a reason, because you much rather have him do it to you versus life itself. Yeah, like you much rather get the discipline from your father than from a judge. You much rather get my parents never used the word grounded. They use restriction. Yes. Exactly. Let's go. They never used the word grounded. They used the word. You much rather have restriction than being in jail. Yes. It's those inklings in life where, again, I count the blessings that I have for having my dad, staunch man of God, his own story of how he got here, breaking what some would view as a generational curse of sorts, where like his family was on a trajectory, and then he breaks that trajectory and sets a new line of godly leaders and great destinies ahead with me, my brother, and in some ways my sister. And also being able to, I mean, not only that, it's like, I mean, it's not a requirement for a father to be in the military, but I think there are values that are taught in the military that when like that just show in the everyday actions of said person that bleeds over into the children and the household as well, because there are values that are taught in the military that I know I wouldn't last a day in boot camp, most likely, but in terms of the values and like the morals of what they preach and teach, for even just defending the country, applies to the home in a Christian way, in my opinion. Where, like, again, like it's staunch, it's tough love, but in the end, like you hug it out at the end. It's like, hey, I love you, but you need to know you can't do X, Y, or Z per se. But in trying to pivot into the next portion of this particular debate is.
I would.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just swiping out a fly.
Yeah, there's some flies here.
But what's so crazy is we have a lot in common because my dad was in the Air Force. And so his upbringing in Florida, I guess the way that he would describe it is not ideal. Grew up in some difficult circumstances. And so in the town that he grew up in, Homestead, Florida, the options were very sparse. You either left through the military or you didn't leave. And so you're talking about just the culture. I think the culture of any military environment is that of honor, of order, right? Of dedication, hard work, all of those things. And so for my dad and his unique personality, the military just made sense to him. Like he fit in it perfectly. But interestingly enough, before he died, he told me not to enlist because I was prepared. I could have taken the ASVAB and went the Air Force route and maybe had a pretty nice career going that way. But maybe that wouldn't have allowed me to be in a place where I could actually go into ministry full time, right? Or even have that desire. I mean, God can do anything that He wants, but He told me not to. But it made sense for Him, and so I saw the military and his unique personality actually show up in the local church. So we went to a AME church back in the 90s, right? Small, maybe 50 people in the building at any given time. And so obviously resources were few, and he saw a need and he just stepped in. So they didn't have anybody to print the bulletins for the service. I don't think churches have bulletins.
My last church still does like big handout size.
Yeah, and then you can write the notes in them.
Exactly. Yes.
So my dad, he would use whatever program on his computer on the military base. We didn't even have a computer in our house, but he went to the military base. He typed out the program, went to Kinko's, ran off 50 to 60 copies, and he provided them to the church free of charge because he saw a need and he filled it. When it came to serving in the church, singing wasn't his thing, right? But being an usher was. But he wasn't just like, all right, I'll just stand here and I'll be an usher. He went to the library or he went to the bookstore. He bought the handbook on being an usher. So what color suit you wear, what color shirt you wear,
the shoes,
the shoes, the white gloves. Like he was like by the book. And I don't think if he hadn't have went through a military environment, I'm not sure if he would have shown up in that way. Right. So there was so much value. I saw so much value in him being in the military. And after he passed away, I got to go through his personal effects. And so I even saw some of his notebooks on how he ran meetings. He was very detailed in this notebook of his on what he was going to talk about, what they needed to execute and all that. And I think I would attribute that to his military service and being able to show up that way. Now, interestingly enough, because he showed up that way in all these other spaces, he's kind of showing up that way in the house too. But not in the way that you would expect. It wasn't like I had to get up at 6:30 in the morning and do physical training and all of that. But I mean, he was a strict disciplinarian, and he had expectations for me, and so I tried to chase after his example. He was a straight A student. I sucked at school in elementary school. I didn't care, but come middle school and high school, I was on the honor roll. I was getting all A's or all A's and a B, right? So I was doing what I could to try to emulate him. He was a star athlete. I tried to be a star athlete, and all because I wanted to please him. Now, the other side of that coin is, he was a workaholic as well. So Mr. Mickle, you talked about being present. So when my dad wasn't working his 9-to-5 military job, he was refereeing basketball, or he's umpiring softball, or doing all of those things. And my dad, he didn't show up well when it came to like sporting events. He said, "Oh, I don't want to come because I don't want to make you nervous." And I'm like, I would rather be nervous playing in front of you than have confidence off of the wall and you not be there. And so it was actually closer to the end of his life that one of his military subordinates actually saw me playing basketball, and he goes, "Sergeant Forbes, man, I don't know if you saw your son, but he's doing really well." And then that's when he started showing up a little bit more before he got the cancer diagnosis and ultimately passed away.
Yeah. Anything to reflect on that, Dad?
Well, hearing myself in my earbuds now. So anyway, Josh, first of all, as a father, you don't need to have children to have a family. You are a family right now, you and Megan. So
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people tend to think that we're not a family until we have kids. That's not true. So you're faithful in the little things. You should be faithful in the larger things. So being faithful in your marriage presently, I think, is going to be a blessing that pays off in the future.
Yeah, man.
So regardless of children, you're still a family, right? So, and then you were talking about you'd rather be on restriction from me rather than on, the police or something like that, right? Or the world, life
Yeah.
kicking you down. And it's like, it reminds me of David when God was mad at him for taking the census and all that stuff. I think it was David. And he was like, God gave him a choice. Do you want me, do you want me to punish you? You want me or do you want the world to punish you? He was like, Lord, I'd rather fall into the hands of an angry God than for the world, basically, to, be my demise. And so, I'd rather fall into the hands of an angry father than a world that doesn't care about you, because, even though he's angry, he still loves you, and obviously died for us and everything. So it's not a great feeling at all, but it's awesome to have that love, and Pastor, you talked about your dad not attending a lot of your stuff as, sports and things. I came from a home where my mom and my biological father, they got married at a very young age because she was pregnant at 16.
Wow.
Had me at 17, and they quickly got divorced soon thereafter. And immediately, like less than a year later, it was a big, divorce process. Who's going to get Jay, as my mom called me. She didn't like the word Jack because that was my father's name, and obviously, she didn't like it. So basically, I was awarded custody to my mom, and since then, I mean, she was 17, and we raised each other. So when I was 17, she was only 34. So, she was a mother / father figure to me. And I had, she had several husbands after that. And one of them was Lynn Ross, was really the only father figure in my life. But that brings to me the importance of church. Obviously, church is not a building, it's the people. And without the church, man, I mean, I don't know. I think that, Josh, you talking about how single parenthood, and a lot of single parents are women. So that tells me that there's even more need for the church, not just for salvation, but for, hey, man, these kids, especially guys, but girls need a father too. But there's no father at the house, right? What about church? I mean, you could say you're a father figure to people you don't even know, right? They see you, they watch you. I mean, you're always being watched, and it's scary to think about because you're on display 24 hours a day. Well, when you're outside the house to other people, right?
Yeah.
And so we, especially guys, should model what it is to be a man, a godly man, a husband, a father, a friend. And sometimes a friend is, hey man, you're screwing up in this area. How about you not talk about it, or something like that, out of love, not out of finger pointing. So it's a great point in that, Josh, with the single parents and everything, the church needs to step. I tell you, man, if the church were to step in where the church should be stepping in, I think a lot of problems would be greatly lessened. You talk about hunger, you're talking about no father figures, you're talking about, hey, I don't know how to change the oil in my car, right? Or how to cut my grass or stuff like that. And it was kind of funny. Michigan State University, I just saw this on the news last week, said that they're doing an adult 101 class. It is the most, at the moment, requested, or they're getting ready to graduate. But this past year was the most requested class and attended class. It was adult 101. And literally, one of the courses I heard was how to use a mop. I'm like, what? How do you not? I don't get it. But some of the things were like how to change oil and how to do a checkbook and all that kind of stuff. We used to do that. It's called civics class. But they took it out of the curriculum for some reason. But anyway,
Mhm.
Church with godly men standing up,
Yeah.
filling the gap. I think, man, what a powerful testimony that would be. And I think it'll eventually get there after pruning, after
Mm.
cleansing, after God shakes the tree and all the stuff that's dead falls off, right? And then I think that's going to be the movement, the ultimate movement of another revival and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. So, fathers play a huge, huge pivotal role in the church, and I shouldn't say just fathers, but men in the
Mm.
church, in their families, regardless if they have children, and in the lives of others, especially youth and younger adults, because they may not know or never been exposed to what it is to be a man, a godly man. I mean, I never did.
Yeah.
I never went to church as a kid. The only time I went to church was summer camp, and it
Vacation
was
Bible School.
2 weeks long, and you had to I got the little paper crown with the little fake jewels in it because I learned the most verses in 2 weeks. It was 2 weeks camp, Sunday
Yeah.
vacation Bible school. Anyway, but I never went to
Yeah.
church growing up. My mom didn't require it. She was a believer. She just
Mhm.
wasn't living at that time, the life of a Christian. So anyway, that was just, my
Yeah.
2 cents thrown in there.
I was thinking as you were talking, Jack. There's a quote from Bill Hybels. He was a pastor of Willow Creek, one of the largest churches in America, and he says that the local church is the hope of the world.
Mhm.
As you were talking, I was just thinking about all of the implications of that statement that transcend just the salvation aspect. Obviously, the local church is the vehicle for proclaiming salvation and a hope in Jesus Christ. But to your point, there are meant to be surrogate fathers, spiritual fathers, spiritual mothers, right? Scripture says, I think it's in Psalms, that when my father and mother forsake me, you will take me up. Or um, or if Jesus's disciples, one of them said, we left everything. We left our family, we left our kids, our parents. And he's like, do you not know that if you've left those things for my sake, that you'll get 100 more in this lifetime and in the life to come? So that means if for whatever reason, my parents have left me or they didn't show up well for me, but then I'm planted in the local church as that young adult who doesn't know how to do life, who doesn't know how to push a broom or get a mop wet and clean a floor, that there's going to be spiritual fathers and sons, or fathers and mothers, that are going to help develop you and build you up. I like movies like The Forge, right? I don't know if you guys saw that Priscilla Shire movie, but that is a perfect example of what the local church is intended to do. And it's not just, I don't think, just like a one-on-one mentorship, but it's like if there's a variety of men with a variety of skill sets, maybe one in finance, one in business, one in whatever, right? And they all pour in to an individual, then you've just made that individual that much more stronger, right? So again, that's I think honestly, revival will break out not just when there's emotionalism or just a heightened sense of expectation, but when we actually live out the gospel, right? Because we can have a mountaintop experience with God all we want, but if we're not living it out in the valley, if we're not living it out in the Monday through Saturday, then true revival is not going to spread across the face of the earth, which reminds me of this verse in Malachi. It's literally like the last verse in the Old Testament. And so I think it's a big deal, because if you want to know what's on God's mind, maybe pay attention to the first thing that he says and the last thing that he says, right? In your last will and testament before you pass away, that's probably going to be one of the most important things that people read from you. But in Malachi, it says that I will turn the hearts of the fathers to the sons, and I will turn the hearts of the sons to the father, lest a curse come on the land. So God is saying conditionally, if you don't want a curse to come on your land, if you don't want a curse to come into your community, then it is absolutely important that whatever boat you find yourself in, whether you're a son, a natural son or a spiritual son, or a natural father or a spiritual father, that there needs to be some convergence of generations, a convergence of wisdom, a convergence of relationship, so that there can be continuity. Because what would suck is if one generation passes away without imparting wisdom or wealth or just practical application to you, and you have to figure it out all on your own. That would suck, because you're starting over from square one. And then if that happens to you and you don't pass on your wisdom to your child, then they have to start over from square one as well, which makes it more difficult. But you think about the families that have huge legacies. That's because there's this transfer of wealth and knowledge and skill set from one generation to the next.
Yeah. And the next thing I want to really dive into this is just to ask two staunch men, for someone that may have the question of how do you go about it if you were to be in a single parent household, like if you don't have the father, if you don't have the mother, like what would you like in terms of, especially you, Dad, like how was that like for you growing up in terms of going through that, and then also any advice you would give to someone that like doesn't have that figure of father or motherness in the household?
So how I handled it, well, I didn't know any better. You can't really miss what you never had.
Wow.
So I knew there were fathers, obviously. I was a good friend, my best friend growing up, Donovan. He had a mother and father, and they're great people, and just love them to death. But at home, my mom was great. Wasn't a perfect mother, but I think she did a bang up job. So I think she imparted a lot of wisdom to me, almost on a daily basis. Just either because I screwed up or because she's just waxing poetic or thinking about the past, or watching a movie or listening to a song. She would always say, hey, this, that, and the other, or I remember when this, that, and the other. And then I would take little nuggets of wisdom from that. But what I did, like I said, I wasn't depressed. I wasn't missing a father because I didn't know a father to miss anyway. Right. So I really I was into music, man. My whole life was music. Just jamming with my boom box, with my headphones, with my cassette tapes, with listening to the radio, wherever I was at, whatever I was doing, I had music. That was my number one thing, and it remained so. Gosh, as early as I can remember, music was in our house. That was my escape, I guess. Maybe that was the way I was dealing with it. I don't know. I never at any time felt unhappy. There was one year, 1984, where my mom and we got, because there were some issues going on with her husband at the time. They got a divorce, and now all of a sudden it's just her, and she couldn't afford to rent. So we had to literally live out of our car for the summer into the first week of my freshman year of high school, freshman year of high school, which really freshman year, your first year of high school, my first week of high school, I had to wear the same exact clothes because that's all she could afford was one set. Everything else was in the car. There was no getting it out, we didn't have an iron. So it was kind of like, oh my God, really? You know how kids are, they could be mean and cruel. But anyway, we moved past that. So what I would advise people who were in that same situation, really, I know guys, because I'm not a girl, I can't speak from a girl's perspective, but guys tend to draw to things that they are familiar with, or things that they agree with. Like goes to like. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why a lot of young men, especially, they through lack of choices on their end, or what they perceive as a lack of choices, they will join a gang or some sort, or if they're lucky, they join a team which, whether it be sports of basketball, football, track and field, you name it, curling, I don't know what team, but it's the thing that they gravitate to because there's a father figure, i.e. the coach or the gang leader, whatever, that they feel wants them, because you have to participate in their group. You have to do something to be in that group. And then once you're in that group, there's a camaraderie that, hey, you're with us. That other high school, they're losers. We're the winners. You're with us, right? The gang, they're losers. You're with us. We got your back. And I think a father figure is that one who should be doing that, right? Or a big brother, if you will.
Yeah.
So I would recommend, the only thing I could recommend is church. It sounds corny, sounds cliche, but I'm telling you, if you get, and that's, Wednesday night, y'all still have Wednesday night youth services, right?
Yeah.
Or the Access, I guess. That stuff is powerful. I worked security there when we were over there at Cordova. And that was back in the day where they said no purpling, because what was it? Green and the girls were green and the guys were blue or something like that. There was no purpling. Whatever colors make purple, there was no purpling allowed. So, I remember showing up, and it was kind of, the people came from rough areas and they themselves were rough. But that's what Jesus said. Give me those people. That's who I want. I'm not here to seek the found. I'm here to seek the lost, right? And seeing some of these guys is a little bit, I was like, hey, man, what are you doing smoking? Get your butt over here. It was just, you had to deal with that. But it was so awesome to see those same people in turn, days, weeks, months, years later, now they're leaders in the house of God. And it's so awesome to see that. And that's what I think that we as adults, men, leaders, even if you're not a leader per se, but if you're a guy, you need to model that behavior that says, hey, Jesus wasn't weak. That dude wasn't a weak guy. He could take the punishment, he could take the hits, but he's still full of love. And I think we need to model that same thing. I think a guy needs to be not tough, but he needs to be a protector. He needs, in more ways than just being physical, but I'm talking about, I'm going to protect your heart. I'm going to protect your mind. I'm going to protect you physically. I'm going to provide for you, that kind of way. And that sounds like a marriage, but it's also to other young, male adult kids, being that, modeling that, and say, and they look at you and say, I feel comfortable around you. I feel safe. I feel protected. I feel something in you that I want, and that's how it's kind of like, you hook them. I think that's the way you do it. And I would recommend, and it, like I said, sounds corny and cliche, but you get yourself involved in it. I'm telling you, you start losing yourself in the things of the Lord, and you get excited about it. If they see that same excitement and genuineness, you got to be authentic, because kids, anybody will see through it, especially kids, right? But if you're genuine and authentic and excited about what you believe in, man, it's like, I don't know how you say it, flies the honey or whatever it is. They'll be attracted to it, and it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be all smooth, but it's a start, and you build a foundation, and you can grow off that. And then they look back 10, 15, 20 years later, and they remember you. And I remember the first guy, and I lived on 528 East Avenue in Panama City, Florida. We lived there for a year, and I was 7 years old, maybe 6, 7 years old. Anyway, this is a door-to-door guy. Hey, my name is, I called him, his name was William. His last name was Pickle, but I called him Bill Pickle. There was a reason for that. I can't remember. Anyway, he was like, hey, do you want to go to church? And I was like, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I'll pick you up. Blah, blah, blah. The bus came. It's like school bus, pick me up. We'd go to church. It was Baptist church. And, it wasn't anything flashy, but I still remember him. And I got my very first Bible from him that he paid for. He gave it to me. I couldn't afford it. And I still have it upstairs in the loft upstairs on the next to the couch that we have up there. And you remember positive influences for the rest of your life. And that one time that he came knocking on my door talking about Jesus, right? And he believed in me when probably no one else will when it comes to man, you didn't go to church that week. How come you hadn't been to church in 2 weeks, 3 weeks? Where you been, man? Love to, and he was that guy. So I think that's where I would advise people to go. Church, youth group, especially if you're young, but even if you're a young adult, man, get involved, get in there, and because it's going to yield dividends that you didn't even think of. I mean, there's a lot of you got to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. Sometimes you can't just be wallowing in self-pity, but you make the first move, take the first step, man. Bam. I think it would. That's the safety net right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So another like off the top of my head, just growing up watching you, it's just that church we went to, Open Door Church, like my grandfather, your father-in-law, and our lead pastor, Pastor Tony. Like I remember them just telling me stories of like their first look at you, and they're like, "Hey, you need to change up what you're doing, and then you can be with Julie." And then, I mean, just the stories like of where you've come and how far you've come. Like again, it just resonates with me of like if this guy who went through so many stuff, living in the car, single mother, and then setting the example for me and my siblings. I mean, it just resonates even more of like how I like when I do have children one day, how I want to go about the business of setting the example. But Pastor Josh, so what would you advise for someone to say, like even if it's not a divorced household, like in your situation, your father passed away. So how would you go about like if someone is living such a in a single parent household like that?
Yeah, I would say you can't choose who your biological parents are. But if you are in a space where you're missing that male role model, you're actually in a privileged position because now you get to choose who you let into your world. And with choice, you need to have some good parameters. But I think what we see with a lot of maladjusted young men is that they don't have parameters. They don't have criteria set up for who would be the ideal father figure in their life. They just kind of just gravitate to whatever's in proximity. So if it's in a rough neighborhood, right, and gangs are prevalent, then by default, you may gravitate towards a gang. You're not interviewing them. You're not seeing what their character attributes are. You're not seeing whether they share your same values. You're just, well, it seems like it's a safe space. Nobody will mess with me if I'm affiliated with this particular gang. So, why not give it a shot? I think going about it by default is not the best option or the best route for you to go. Instead, I would sit down. If I'm talking to a young man, then I would encourage you, what does God say that a healthy man of God looks like? What character attributes do they have? How are they supposed to show up? You can find it in scripture. And I would even say this, if you don't go to any other place, go to 1 Corinthians chapter 13. It's the love chapter. And so we can see Jesus's love expressed for us through those words, but we see it in marriages, in wedding ceremonies. We talk about love is patient. So is there a male figure? Is he patient with you? You know that you're not going to be perfect. You know that you're still figuring things out. Is he going to be kind to you? Is he going to always believe the best in you, hope the best for you, right? Persevere and not give up. That's the type of father figure that I would try to invite into my life, right? They're not going to be perfect. So just to save you the suspense, there is no father figure that is perfect other than God. But I think if you have those attributes already there and then you're looking for them, then I believe that God will show you the father figure or a group of men that need to be in your world to pour into you, to strengthen you, to develop you, but more importantly, to hold you accountable. Because I can make an investment in a stock, I can make an investment in cryptocurrency, but if I don't turn around and hold that particular stock or hold that particular company accountable for the investment that I've made, then my investment could be wasted. In the same way for father figures, when you're looking for a father figure, you have to allow them to hold you accountable. They're investing time, they're investing resources, they're investing wisdom, right? And so it is absolutely appropriate that they say, okay, we've made this investment. Now, like, show me where this investment is paying off, whether it's development of your character or whether it's, okay, hey, I invested in you to help you take the SATs or to help you apply for college. All right, now the accountability is, which college did you decide? Right? Okay, you decided on a college. All right, great. I've been checking in. I've been investing. What are your grades like? So there has to be that allowance of accountability, because I've seen people that are good at collecting father figures like action figures, and they just whatever they can get
certain aspects from different people.
Yeah, aspects. But the thing about it, they don't want to be held accountable. It's almost like they're taking, but they're not. It's not a reciprocal exchange.
Yeah,
which is what every father and son relationship should be. It shouldn't just be that a father just makes a demand of his kids, do this, do this, do this, do this. But instead it should be, what am I depositing in you, right? Through core memories, through stories, through anecdotes, through different experiences. I think that's so important. So to answer the question, you're in a privileged position if you can search for a father figure. You can curate your life with them, but at the same time, as you're searching for them, as you have that biblical criteria for what a godly father figure should be, now you have to allow them to hold you accountable, because that's the nature of the relationship.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would just be transactional.
And next part we want to dive into here is, and this is all subject, and this is all subject. What's the word? Subjectical. What's the
subjective?
Subjective. Yes, I'm brain fart this morning. This is all subjective when we talk about this right here, and that is this: how to raise children, especially today in today's age. I would just go off and say,
how do you do it? I don't know.
Well,
teach me.
Okay, so here's so for me personally, and I'm just speaking on this because of this is how, like, this is the formula that worked for me, and I think me and my wife are on a understanding of, yes, this is how we would do it. One, my child does not get an iPad at like age 0 all the way up to high school. They don't get a like an iPhone until like high school. I mean, technology today, like, there are so many things that I did not get until I was like a sophomore in high school. And then I'm looking at elementary school kids and middle school kids with like all this fancy technology. I'm like, one, I'm thinking spoiled. Two, I'm thinking, why? There's no need for it. I mean,
Hey.
I mean, if it's a way to keep the baby quiet when you're out shopping, again, my dad can attest to. It's like my first 5. He said it at his retirement ceremony that like my son's first 5 years, we thought he was possessed by the devil. We couldn't go to church with him. So he will tell you that story ad nauseum. So maybe if back in the day, if I had an iPad watching something, I probably would have kept my mouth shut. But I mean,
no,
yeah.
There was Game Boys back when you were a kid.
No, not me.
What?
No, not me.
Sega Genesis.
No. PlayStation 2.
Wow. Okay.
PlayStation 2.
So I'm making you older than what you actually are. So we had the Game Boys, right? Actually, I didn't have a Game Boy. I was lucky to have a Nintendo at the house, and that, man, it just dominated my mind because obviously you can't save your progress on a Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
So that means you either beat the game or you turn it off. I'm looking at my lips and I'm just pressing the buttons and
and then your battery dies.
No, there's no battery.
Oh no, the Game Boy has a battery.
Oh, the Game Boy. I never had a Game Boy, just a regular Nintendo.
Okay.
Where you had to plug it in and then turn it to channel 4.
Yeah.
So there was no inputs.
I grew up with the TV with an antenna. We would watch a movie on the VHS, and then my dad and parents would be like, flip the cord out and put the antenna on. We watch Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, bedtime.
Yep.
That was the routine of my household growing up when I was a child. But yeah.
Rude awakening though. This particular generation that we're in right now, they are issued tablets. Like my son at his school, he's issued
what grade?
Like they're issued tablets in middle school and in some elementary schools because that's where the work is taking place. It's more in the digital space now than it is actually on paper. And so I was working on my podcast, working on some of my graphics, and so I have Canva, and so I was telling my son, I was like, I'm kind of frustrated with this because I want to do a thumbnail and I want my image to be here, and I don't want the logo for the podcast to be there. And he's like, oh, Canva is what we use in school. 5 minutes, he got my thumbnail looking. I'm like, how did you do that? It's like, Dad, like that's just routine for us in school. So that's where they're doing their work. They're doing it in a digital space right now. So I hope that, when you and Megan have kids, keep them away from technology as much as you can, but technology is going to find your child.
Yeah.
When they go to school, it's not coloring sheets as much anymore. Right. Hopefully they can learn to play house and play with manipulatives and climb into the playhouse and all those things. But
there's this Instagram guy that just goes off on everything, like what the millennials grew up with, from the playground to the down to the cereal and the food that we used to eat back in the day. And you look at it today, it's like it's not even remotely close of what this upcoming generation is experiencing. And for this particular topic, and I'll pivot back to you. How would you raise your kids? Like, would you change anything different with today's technology, or would you keep it how you had it grown with your children?
Yeah, I think the way that I grew up being allowed to go to the end of the block and go to the park. All right, Mom, going to the park. I grew up playing tag, and you actually you played tag with kids that you didn't know. All right,
tag, kickball, all of that. Yep.
Put your foot in a circle, and we're deciding who's it. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. We had to do all of those things, and guess what? Sometimes you got picked last for kickball. That's life. But now, my generation, we've become the helicopter parents. We've become the parents who've tried to prevent our kids from experiencing any discomfort, any inconvenience, any pain. And so now my fear is that when life actually hits them in the face, they're not going to be able.
They don't know what to do.
They're not going to be able to cope well. So I would have preferred for Josiah and Angel to grow up in a world where they had to scrape their knee at the park and mom and dad wasn't there to hover over them, that they had to throw dirt on their wounds and then come back in the house. And
here comes the disinfectant spray.
Yeah. No. So yeah, that's literally it. And it was called Bactine at that particular time. And
yes.
And you saw the commercials for it and you sprayed it on the wound and all that, or hydrogen peroxide.
Burn you like crazy. Yeah.
I think pain is the way, but we've robbed a generation by denying them that. And I'm not saying for them to go through unnecessary pain. I'm talking about the incidental pain that comes with scraping a knee, the incidental pain that comes with not being picked for the kickball team, the pain where your friends one day and then they don't like you the next day.
Those three things that you explain can be applied in any aspect in life. You can scrape your knee at a construction or a warehouse. You can not get picked for a particular work project.
Absolutely.
And other things. Yeah.
And again, my concern is, how will this generation cope through pain and disappointment? And are they going to be the generation then that amplifies it to their kids, where they keep their kids wrapped in bubble wrap so that nothing can happen to them? I think about, at the time of this recording, there's a thunderstorm that's going on. And here in the community where we live, the trees that we have, they haven't endured a whole lot of strong winds. So then in the event that a strong wind comes, these trees, they snap like twigs. But if you go probably down to Florida, the Gulf Coast, right, you see those palm trees and they're hanging over and they're a little crooked, but they stood up to hurricanes because they've experienced the adversity of the wind over and over and over again. And that's what makes them built different. And I think for this generation, the generation of our kids coming up behind us, they need to feel the wind. They need to feel the adversity. They need to feel the challenge from a parent, from a role model. So then when, again, they become an adult, they don't snap.
How about you, Dad? I remember the famous story that you always said that you're like, every single weekend, your mother would say, go outside, play, come inside if you have to go to the bathroom, or if it's lunch or dinner time or bedtime.
Yeah. I mean, summertime, it was get out of the house, don't come back. Cause parents back then like to sleep in and like to watch their own TV shows and do whatever they do. They don't want kids running around. And that's how we grew up. So yeah. Only time we came in was, like you said, get something to eat or drink and then quickly get out. Thank God Donovan's parents, they had a house that was really nice. They had a pool table and garage you could actually go in and hang out. So even if it was raining, we were over there. So yeah. So I mean, if I had to change anything, there was, like you said, Pastor Josh, is that it's like, so Julie, my wife, and I, we grew up very great households, as far as there was love, there was discipline, and there was a roof over our heads, food in our belly, and clothes on our back. Not a lot, but we grew up poor, right? Especially, I mean, poor.
Yeah.
Not a lot of money, maybe not, not poor. Anyway, so when we grew up and had children, Joshua, Noah, and Nicole, we felt it was our duty. Not duty. We didn't want them to experience what we experienced when it came to, having to wear the same clothes 2 or 3 times a week, to school, or, whatever the case may be. They didn't have a lot of electronics. Heck, I didn't have any electronics growing up because we didn't have any. Our electronics was at the arcade.
There we go.
The Atari, when it first came out, that was ours. I never had an Atari. Couldn't afford it. Donovan did. So,
Just
so
to cut in, me and Megan went to a Cracker Barrel like a few weekends ago.
Shout out Cracker
And
Barrel.
there's like a Mega Atari HD joystick with like 2,000 games on it for like $100. I'm like,
Nostalgia.
no,
You should get it for-
I was just about to buy it, and I'm like, what's the price tag? I'm like,
You should have got it
No.
for your dad for Father's Day, so then he could really.
Dad's gonna be surprised with his Father's Day gift.
All right.
So
Yeah.
So I would change that in the sense that I don't think that you guys went without on anything. Maybe, I mean, some electronics, sure. I mean, that's a choice, right?
Yeah.
It's not, we could have afforded it, but we chose not to buy it, right? Certain things. We
Yeah.
chose not to have satellite or cable because we didn't, sometimes we couldn't afford it. Like when Joshua was very young, there was a lot we couldn't afford. And we literally, like when we lived in Maryland, it was, we had VHS, right? And the antenna we lived in Elkton, Maryland, which was right in between Baltimore and Philly. There was not a lot of reception there, right?
Yeah.
So we didn't really watch a lot of TV outside of VHS tapes, and very few of those. So, but the other things were choices. We didn't want you to have certain things because we didn't think there was value in it. But there was other things that they did have that, we said, I want you to experience in life as far as have fun, enjoy yourself, be a kid, right?
Yeah.
That's what being a young kid, so long as you're respectful, so long as you're obeying the rules, so long as, you know what I'm saying? You just can't run over mom and dad and get whatever you want. But I think it became more difficult as they grew older, especially into young adulthood, where you see issues arising. And sometimes we allowed certain things to happen because, hey, we see that pitfall right there. It's not a big one, but it's a little one. We're going to allow you to go in it. But there was other ones we saw, and maybe they weren't necessarily bigger, but we would say, hey, you don't need to go to that pitfall. And like you said, to your point, Pastor, is that, maybe sometimes we should have allowed certain things to happen because you're there. In 30 years, heck, tomorrow, for all we know, we may not be here anymore, right? So you got to learn how to function as an adult on your own. So I think that's where, because we grew up without so many things, and because also there's a lot, I shouldn't say a lot, there is a little bit of, as a parent, you're not perfect and you make mistakes, right? And when you make a mistake, especially when you feel particularly grieved about, it's like, I'm going to make up for that by, I'm going to get you an extra nice Christmas present or birthday present, or, hey, that thing you wanted to go on for school that cost whatever, here you go. You can now go. It was our way of kind of offsetting some bad parenting, if you will. Be that as it may, whatever. So, but we did try to not only just model it, but I mean, for instance, Nicole, my one and only daughter, love her dearly. I try to model what I wanted her husband, the future husband, to be by taking her out, actually on a date. Hey, this is how this dude, whoever he is coming up, should treat you, right? Opening doors for you. I know a lot of people don't do that anymore. Open door. How about actually getting out of the vehicle and walking to the front door, knocking, meeting the parents, right? And escorting you to the car, opening the door, close it, and then go around to his side. Not honk the horn or text you, hey, I'm outside, I'm ready to pick you up. That kind of thing.
It's kind of
paying for your meals, having fun, joyful, doing whatever, right? Being respectful, and then bam, and saying, hey, that's how a guy should treat you. Always, always, always. I don't know if that sunk in. I'm hoping it did. And she's not married, but hopefully one day she'll find that guy who's God-loving man, who loves her as much as I love her, obviously in a different way, but still who's willing to give his life for her. So, and for Noah and Josh, I wanted to say, hey, you need to be that guy who's going to be that person for your wife, And there still works, like, Joshua calls me a lot, like, how do I do this? What do I do? Or he calls me and sends me a picture of something he did,
Yep.
saying, look what I did, which is, to me as a father, is like very, very, I'm like, yeah, okay. Yeah, that looks good.
Yeah.
I had to teach him how to change some wire, make put a ceiling fan in, and
Yep.
do some other things electrical, not a lot, just little things, maybe a little bit of plumbing. And then he goes on his own and does it. And it's like, there's some fruit. I love it.
Sunk in.
Yep.
And so Noah's the same way. I'm trying to teach him things. He lives in an apartment. There's only so much he can do.
Yep.
But as far as being a father, I want to be there for him when he has life issues and say, hey, Dad, how do I do this? What do I do? Same thing for Nicole. We each love our children and so much, but each child has their own personality, obviously, but you love them not more or less, but differently sometimes, because they have a certain aspect of their character that speaks to you in one way or another that's different than the other two. And so you try to strengthen where they're weak and encourage where they're strong. And then hopefully, you teach them and how they should go. And when they're old, they will not depart from it. So, but there's always that little bit of rebellion. Seems to be always that little bit of, well, I'm going to be my own person now. And you should. It's just do it in the right way, the biblical way. And so that's, if I had to change things over again, or I don't want to say it's a regret. I think every parent has this, is we should have maybe allowed certain things to happen that we knew that were going to happen, that weren't necessarily egregious or very bad, just life lessons that we kind of didn't allow to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that would be the thing I would, if I had to change something, that would be it.
Jack, in parenting 3 children who are, you're 30.
I'm 30. We're 5 years apart from my brother, and I'm 9 years apart from my sister.
Okay. And you're
31.
You're 31. So
I'm 45.
You're 45?
No.
I would believe you, because like literally what I see on the screen right now, I'm just like, you look
jealousy. It's that thing. It's like, man, I hate you so much, man. You just look so good.
But did you notice like kind of like an evolution to your parenting, where from like birth to, I don't know, maybe early to mid adolescence, you were the authority figure, and then you evolved from authority figure to like a coach, where you're still in control, you're still the coach, you drop the plays, they execute it, right? And then in maybe early adulthood, you evolve from coach to consultant, where it's you give them thoughts and it's on them whether they're going to execute them or not. And then maybe this later stage of parenting, you become a friend, right? Have you seen that kind of evolve in your parenting?
I did. I think everyone before they have children knows exactly how they're going to parent. They say, this is how it's going to go. This is how we're going to do it. And I laugh. Well, I shouldn't say laugh. I chuckle inside when I hear that, because it changes so much based on life and how you were parented and how you see other people being parented, and all these kinds of things. And so I was brought up in not a strict household, because there was a lot that went on in that house of mine that a lot of parents wouldn't allow. But it was a respectful, huge on respect, huge on, I'm the mother, because I didn't have a father. I'm the mother, you're the son. That's how that relationship is. But a weird dynamic in the sense, she was young. And I think for my age, I was a little bit more mature than I should have been, because I was really raised on my own, as far as, no brothers or sisters. And it was just me and my mom, and she was working a lot. I was home by myself a lot, so there's that dynamic. There's a weird, so she was also my friend certain times. So when Joshua was born, when Noah was born, and then later on, when obviously Nicole was born, when Joshua was born, it was, hey, this is how we're doing it. This is how we're going to do it. And we did. We strayed on that. And church was, hey, certain shows on TV, if you watch that, you need to rethink yourself. It was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, what? Okay,
Yes.
got it. And I'm like, yeah, we're not going to watch that.
Yeah.
We're going to do it this way. And I found myself, maybe 5-10 years later, and also the fact that we moved to California. So think of Virginia, where we were at. It was very strict, very disciplinarian at church. We moved to California. It was the opposite of that. It was, they
I remember the first church service we go to. We're wearing suits and ties, and everyone's asking, "Are you the guest pastor?"
Right. Yeah. That's how we were brought up. You wore your best at church, right? And so we go to California. Everybody's shorts, flip flops, and aloha shirts. You know what I mean? And sports jerseys. And I'm like, what the heck is this? So yeah, they did. Our first time there. Julie and I. She was in a dress. I was in a shirt and tie, and kids were dressed, to the nines, so to speak. And they said, "Oh, you guest pastor today?" I'm like, nope. So it was really weird. They didn't call, a lot of their children didn't call the elders by pastor this or that. They didn't say, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, no, ma'am, no, sir. None of that. They thought it was rude. Matter of fact, when I think it was Josh or Noah went to a friend's down the street and he was saying, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. They were like, you don't need to say that. I'm like, and then I heard about it. I was like, yes, you do. Because their son came to my house, called me Jack. I was like, oh no. It doesn't go that way. You can put a Mr. in front of that. You can call me Mr. Jack. You can call me Mr. Mickle, but still put something in front. Don't be calling. We are not equals. So that's how that relationship worked, was that you have to recognize you are not mine or your mother's equal. And the first time, the only time, Josh called Julie dude, I almost threw him through a wall. I think he remembers that. We were in the foyer and Julie said something to him that, I don't know, it was kind of off the cuff, like go do something in the cleaning room. I don't know what it was. And he said, dude, I did it, or dude, I will, or dude something. And all I heard was dude.
Yeah, now today it's bruh. Yeah.
Yep.
Bruh. I took you and I threw you. I didn't throw you. I forcibly put you against the wall. I told you will never call your mom dude again. You hear that? And so after that, here comes Noah and Nicole. I think we become a little bit more. So California changed the way so I looked at things as a strict disciplinarian. Bam, bam, in this little box. But California kind of opened me up, not being lazy, not saying, I know Jesus said this, but did he really mean? No, nothing like that. It was still Jesus' word is Jesus' word. But I didn't take offense to a lot of things that people didn't necessarily agree with how we live, what we believe. There in Virginia beforehand, I was like, yeah, but you don't believe in, you're not, what? And so it was very kind of standoffish a little bit. So California softened that stance in the sense that, hey, how about let's try a little love. Let's try a little, not everybody thinks the same as you. Doesn't make them wrong, because they don't believe, they like hymns, you don't. It doesn't make them a bad person, or vice versa. So we softened our stance a little bit on a lot of things and started to think that, I think we need to live a life that still honors, respects, and models Christ in his word, but not be so dang beat people over the head with it, because I think it turns people off. And I don't want to turn people off. I don't want to compromise, and I will not compromise, but I don't want to be that guy where, oh my God, Daddy's that's all he does. It's like always gets in my business and says how bad I am and what I need to change and improve. I don't want to be that guy. I never have been that guy, except for certain things early on in church. So I moved from being that one role into another role. And we always told our children, you don't need me to be a friend to you. You have friends with a parent. So we're going to be the parent to you. And then transitioning to once they become young adults and have their own lives, now we're a parent, but we're also a friend now, an advice giver, a guidance counselor, if you will. It's awesome. Yeah. Consultant. It's just an awesome it's different. And it takes a lot of getting used to, because you have to change the way, communication flows a little bit, and how because, you start talking to, your kids about sex like it's no big deal. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they've been there, done that now, whereas before they hadn't. So it's kind of, you got to get used to that. There's different roles, most definitely. And I think we handled that portion well. We're still getting used to, believe it or not, and no one really talks about it because I don't think there's any classes that prepare you for it, is being empty nesters.
Yeah.
We've never lived by ourselves until now. Julie and I, we spent 30. So we got married in 92. So do the math, 92 to last year, we had kids here.
Yep.
And so we'd never lived by ourselves. So once they all moved out, you're an empty nester. And how do you deal with that? Because you get up, there's no one there. You go to bed, there's no one there. There's no one to, hey, sit down, watch a movie with us, and that kind of thing.
That's what animals and pets are for.
Yeah, well, so you don't want to be a stranger to your wife either in life, in a marriage. That's why we had couch time all the time. It was always Julie and I. Julie and I were the family. You kids just happened to come along, And so there is still that empty nest syndrome, empty nesting of getting used to it. But Julie and I are not strangers. We're not, wow, who are you? We still know each other. We still have fun. We laugh at stupid stuff. We watch movies and we quote movie lines back to each other. We still have that flame. So, you know what I'm saying? It does change, but parents change in different ways than their children are starting out. And the parents are kind of going to that, okay, we're climbing this hill. We're kind of coming to that top of that hill now. And then it goes, so when you get to a certain age, you're going down the hill. So that's a different learning curve for us. And I think women experience it differently than men do.
Sure.
So,
and I think if your identity is rooted in raising kids, if you think of yourself as a parent before a husband or a parent before a wife, and you just invested all that time in the soccer games and the recitals and all of that, and then they age out of the house and they begin to branch out and live their own lives, then that's where I think a lot of difficulty is going to present itself as far as being empty nesters, because then you're like, well, now I don't have any purpose. And a sad state of affairs is a lot of marriages actually end in divorce once the last kid leaves the house, because their purpose was focused on the kids instead of on the marriage.
That's exactly what happened with my wife's parents. Like the moment she gets married to me, our first year together, we're actually living with her parents actually. And then once we get our first apartment together, living alone, it wasn't too long after where things just broke off, which was a shock to her.
Yeah.
So yes, that's exactly what happened with Megan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so as married individuals, we have to remind ourselves that we chose each other before kids. It wasn't like, ooh, I'm scoping you out to see whether you're going to be a great biological contributor to the kids that I want to have at some point in the future. Like, no, that should never be the motive for marriage. It should be covenant, right? It's God brought us together, and we look good to one another. We have shared values. We have shared interest for the most part, and then we go from there, and we build our lives. We build our family from there. So Jack, I know that you and your wife, and you're retired now from the military, correct? So now that this is opportunity for you guys to dream, to build, to travel, to do all these things, to be that, again, the cheerleader of all three of your children, and say, man, you guys are rocking it. You're doing it. How can we help? Versus there are some family relationships where boundaries are not created, and then parents, after their children become adults and are living their lives, violate those boundaries that currently don't exist, and instead of acting as a consultant, they're acting like an authority figure again. And that really is going to jeopardize the relationship between you and your kids, especially once they become an adult. I have a 22-year-old bonus daughter through my first marriage. And I didn't give you guys context. Josh, you know the context, but Jack, I don't think you do. So my first marriage, I was married for 12 years, and I was together. We were dating for 5 years before that, but my first wife, she passed away unexpectedly, and so I still, and my bonus daughter, she was in college at the time, so she was in this space in between. So she wasn't all the way independent yet. She was still navigating college. But she had one foot in and one foot out. And so I'm like, how do I navigate that with a bonus daughter? And so I feel like now she's 22. She has earned her both bachelor's and master's degrees. She's working a great job. And she stays she stays with her grandma right now, just because the dynamic. I've since remarried and have moved forward with my life. So now I'm more like an advisor and a consultant. And it's, when she brings things to me, it's like, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? But ultimately, she has to make her own decisions, and she has to have that sense of agency and autonomy, and she has to learn it. And so I think she's doing a great job so far. When it comes time for her to relocate to another metropolitan area, I suspect that she's gonna maybe ask for some thoughts, ask for some wisdom, or maybe even some help moving. And we're gonna be there. We're gonna be present to do that. But my job now isn't to say, hey, sweetie, this is what you should be doing and this is what you shouldn't be doing. No, I'm not the authority anymore. I'm the consultant now in her life. But if I acted like an authority, then that would probably create more distance in our relationship, and then there wouldn't be as much relational equity. And I don't think any parent wants their child to leave and not look back. Right. We want to try to foster that relationship as long as we can.
Mm-hmm. All right, and we will close out that because for some reason we actually were somehow running on power, but some of the lights went out during the storm. But we still have internet for some reason, and that's in a whole different area of the house. So, any last final thoughts? I'll start with you, Dad. Any final thoughts on words of wisdom to partake to those that are fathers out there today?
I think we pretty much covered all that. I would like, though, to shout out, you touched on it, but to those father figures in my life. Wayne, obviously you're my father-in-law, but I still consider him a father. Immense influence, and he was a teacher when we first got married. We lived with them for about 6 months when we first got married. He and his wife Naomi, Julie's mom. He was just I learned so much from him because I was a brand new Christian. I was like, hey, what does this mean? And it was good to bounce things back and forth off of him. And he was always there to just be that guy. And Pastor Tony, same thing. He, like you said, Josh, he was like, so we got married by the Justice of Peace in '92 when I first got back off of a North Atlantic cruise. But, because we wanted to start living right, and not being married and doing some of the things we were doing, not exactly living right. Right. So, but he said, I can't marry you until I know you're actually living, a godly life. So you need to start coming to church and show us, show me that you're doing that, not just for one day or 1 week. And so we did. And about 6 months later, he married us at a church at the church in September of that same year. So anyway, he was a great source of inspiration and wisdom and advice, and just watching him, I think of him all the time. I must say not every day, but most every day. I think of how would Pastor Tony handle a particular situation in this, what that I find myself in. The guy who witnessed to me very first, Bill Pickle, still, I'm going to remember him for the rest of my life. And Petty Officer King, he's not a father figure. He was more like a son, not a son, but he was, Josh was about like Noah's age is now. And he, tell a quick story. I was going through what we call in the Navy. I got selected for Chief E7 back in 1999. I was on a cruise, and we had to go through what we call Chief's initiation. And if you don't know, you don't know. But if you do know, you know what Chief's initiation is. And during those things, you do a lot of training. You do a lot of events with the fellow chiefs, senior chiefs, and master chiefs. And a lot of it's designed to make you humble. And so a lot of that happened into the wee early hours of the morning. 6 o'clock in the morning, one morning, actually 3:30 one morning, I was like, you know what? It's too late. I can't do this. So I prepped this guy, Petty Officer King, on the Theodore Roosevelt. I said, look, I need you to take my spot on the flight deck tomorrow when we have this shoot, Sea Whiz shoot that, it's just a practice. We've been through it a million times before. And he knew exactly what to do, and he knew my spot because I was the leader up there on the flight deck at that time. So for the security folks, it's a big story, or I don't want to bore you with the details. So he took my spot because I had just got finished with training. It was 3:30 in the morning. The shoot happened at 6. I wasn't going to be on station. So he took my spot. So long story short is he died on the flight deck that day because the shoot went bad. And had I been there, had I not been in Chief's initiation, I would not be here. Josh would still be here because he was born by then, but Noah and Nicole would not be here. So I always say, whenever Chief's initiation comes around, because usually comes around, it used to in September when I was in the Navy, 32 years, and it was great 32 years. I always remember him. Father's Day, because obviously his daughter, I think his daughter grew up without him. And so I like to remember those people that not only spoke to my life, but allowed me to speak and be here because of something they did, a sacrifice they made. And I think he paid the ultimate, not that he knew he was going to do that, but still he did. So Petty Officer King, shout out to him and his family. I can't, there's nothing that I can say to really, it's not a thank you. It's more of I appreciate you. And the highest respect a man could pay to another because of the sacrifice he paid that day. So that's, I think we covered all the advice and stuff, but I really, wanted to give shout out to those father figures in my life who made a difference and spoke to it.
You?
Yeah. So my dad, Edston Forbes, he hasn't been with us since 1999. Again, the first father that I knew. And I learned a lot from him. Honestly, if he wouldn't have got cancer and he wouldn't have amped up his spiritual life during that season when he was sick, I'm not sure if I would have even made a salvation decision, because I got saved 2 months after he passed away. Right. And I believe that in some way that his life was a seed that was planted, and it turned into salvation for me. He said if he beats this cancer that he would be a preacher. And I don't think I stepped into what I'm doing now because of that, but I just believe that my eternity was impacted because of that. My brother Michael, who he's 10 years my senior, but during the early years of my life, he raised me. He cooked for me. He bathed me. He went to parent teacher conferences while my dad was in the military and my mom worked in bars in the evening time as a bartender. So he raised me. So not only is he a brother to me, but he's a father figure in some respects to me. And he's one of the closest people in my life. right now. So I wouldn't be here without him. And then in my teenage years, a guy named Jacob, he was the youth pastor of the church that I got saved in, and so he always encouraged me, wanted to hang out, just pour into me and all that. So he was a father figure. I think of Walter, who he was another youth pastor of mine, who made space for me and was able to pour into me, even though he was a newlywed and didn't have kids at the time. He was pouring into me like a spiritual father, right? And then CJ, when I was at the University of Idaho, man, he discipled me. He was 28 and I was 18, 19 at the time. And he just always made time, whether it was at Subway or whether it was at a college retreat or whatever. Like, he was always there just setting the example for me. And then I moved to Memphis and had a couple guys, that poured into me. Travis Moody, he's like a mentor, like father figure to me, and has really just given me a lot of wisdom here over the years. Like, I knew him even before I came to the Life Church. Like, that's how long ago it was, and he just he's always just been that source of encouragement. Again, just like a consultant, like he'll check in, like, hey, I was praying for you, thinking about you, and so we hang out, we get lunch, we do all those things, and gosh, there's a lot, but the last two that I want to mention, Jack Seberg. So when my dad got sick with cancer, like, it was literally almost like 24 hours later, he comes to my house, or he comes to my practice. He's like, hey, you're going to be staying with us for a few months while your dad goes down to Texas to get the necessary treatment that he needs. And so he was like a father to me. He encouraged me and really him and his family made such a turbulent situation for me, knowing that my dad is battling cancer, really made it as great as it possibly could, which I am so grateful for. And then the last person is my stepdad, Duke. He's been married to my mom for over 25 years. He has been in my life longer than my natural dad did. I was 15 when my dad passed. So he's been a fixture in my life, whether it's encouragement or showing me practically how to install toilets or how to fix things or to help me get my truck fixed or whatever, or learning how to go and shoot guns. Right. He's always been there. He's been steady. He's been patient. He's been consistent. He's been faithful. And if it wasn't for those guys in my life, and I know I'm probably forgetting many more men who have poured into me, but if it wasn't for those men in my life, then I wouldn't be in the place that I am right now.
Yeah. I would say for me, right off the top, obviously my dad joined us here. Spiritual fathers, I'm thinking, even though when I was a child, those folks at Open Door Church, and then subsequently after that at Living Way Church when we moved to California, and then it was like those two churches like positioned me spiritually, and then when we come here to Memphis, it's the launching point. Like, you've gone through the procedures of the rocket, you're about to launch into space.
Yep.
And then Memphis was that launching pad where it's like, now you're taking off with John Farmer, Pastor Dan Lord of the youth group at the time, Aaron Howe still with us at the Life Church, Johnny Hill. And then, and then outside of the father figures, like, there were, like, I had a brother, yes, but younger. and annoying, and like there's like a 5-year difference. It wasn't like he's experiencing the same stuff I am. He's well far behind. He's in elementary school or just started middle school, and I'm in sophomore high school. Like dynamics aren't the same there. And then I say that because there are a whole bunch of brother figures that I forged with. Parker, still with us. Nick Gardner, happily married, has a child now. Hunter Hambrick, now in Denver. And a whole bevy of others. And now, and now even coming back here, even though he's the youngest brother, Zach, have fun being with him every now and then when he has time. Ben Forehand, Johnny Hill again. Eric Stone is always the loud guy in the lobby. Fun to be around him. And also, to your point, Travis Moody realigning like our vision financially.
Yeah.
Like just being able to have those figures in our life. And it's one of the main reasons why I badly, when we moved back to Virginia and then I met Megan, we got married. I'm like, we badly need to, it's not that we couldn't get that same experience here elsewhere. It's just like, there's just something palpable. Like there's just that intangible it factor of like, this particular place, if it can do what I did, if it can do what it did for me when I was just in high school, what can it do for us as a married couple? And it's one of those things where Megan now has, when she didn't have before, tons of girlfriends that she can hang around and have fun with. She has a job that she now likes and doesn't despise. It's like top down, and also like I do what I do, and I'm at the place that I love doing it. Just a whole bunch of figures. And it all starts at the church of Pastor John, Steve, Lane, and Leslie for their vision of the church. And then like they started in 96 or whatever year it was. And then you have that batch of folks like Brian Petrie and Johnny Hill that came from New Orleans because of Hurricane Katrina. And then subsequently unplanned for, but we roll, the Mickles roll in 09. And then wouldn't you figure it that like those folks in New Orleans, along with that batch that founded in 96. And then now me and Megan becoming such, I don't want to say household names. Like we're not celebrities or anything. It's not the celebrity life, but it's like, who Mickle is, who Megan is. Like everyone knows who Joshua Mickle is because of what has gone on in Access from the drums and now doing videoing and whatnot. It's just, it's always a wonder and a blessing for what that vision of the church has done and how it has affected not only my life, my wife's life, our marital life, and then that vision still carrying out for those students. They may be living in single parent households, like to the points we made earlier, for the church to be not only the pathway for salvation, but also the pathway for other aspects of life. And that's one of the things I will always cherish and always be thankful for what the Life Church has brought to the table. Not only for us men and those that know of the church and go to church, but also what's done for our community. So with that, we will call it quits and see what the power outage is here with this pre-recording. But until then, Pastor Joshua Forbes and my dad, Jack Mickle. And as always, keep kicking it to the King.